I want you to think about the last time you were driving and someone cut you off. What was your immediate reaction? Probably anger, annoyance, or frustration because the person now in front of you seems like a jerk or at least a bad driver. Now, think about the last time you cut someone off while driving. Did you do it on purpose and maliciously? Probably not. So, why is it that when someone does it to us, we hold them fully responsible, but when we do it, we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt? In this video, we're going to discuss the fundamental attribution error, which is the tendency for us to assume the worst about others in a given situation till the roles are reversed. The fundamental attribution error is a cognitive bias that occurs when we assume our observations of another person reflect fixed traits of their personality versus temporary situational factors. In the driving example, most likely the person who cut you off was lost or just didn't see you. However, our brains don't like to consider contextual factors. They like to just say, that's a jerk, and move on. But when we're the person who's doing the cutting off, we often feel bad or embarrassed and give ourselves the grace of a situational explanation. Here's another example. Say you text a friend, and after 2 days, they still haven't replied to you. You might start to think they're mad or that they're being rude. However, if you take 2 days to respond to a text, it's likely because you forgot to respond or because you're too overwhelmed to respond, not because you're mad or being rude. The fundamental attribution error can lead us to having double standards, meaning we get offended or upset at someone else for doing something that we ourselves do or have done. Can also cause us to interpret others' actions in bad faith without considering contextual factors. When we hold those around us, even strangers, to a higher standard than we hold ourselves, it can result in general dissatisfaction in interpersonal relationships, needless stress, and overall high levels of frustration. Although the fundamental attribution error is maladaptive in terms of building and sustaining interpersonal relationships, there are clear perceptual, cognitive, and sociocultural factors that can make it hard for us to overcome, especially if we aren't aware of it. In terms of perception and cognition, we're all limited by our brain's ability to take in what's going on around us. For example, pretend you say hi to someone on the street and they say nothing to you in return. Your first instinct might be to assume that they're unfriendly, but maybe you just didn't notice that they had earbuds in, meaning they likely didn't hear you. Or say you see someone parked across two parking spaces and think, wow, what a selfish driver. But what you didn't see was that when they parked, the lot was full and the car next to them was crooked. So they had to angle their car awkwardly. Now that the other car is gone, you only have part of the picture. So you're making a judgment about the person without all of the relevant information. These are both examples where, because of something we don't know or didn't observe, we assume the worst of the other person for no reason other than that's our brain's default. An individual's level of stress can also affect their likelihood of making the fundamental attribution error. A person might let being cut off in traffic roll off their back on a low stress day, but the same person on a more stressful day will have a greater likelihood of making the fundamental attribution error because it's a mental shortcut. And when we're stressed or overwhelmed, our brains are more likely to rely on mental shortcuts like this one. Another major factor that determines the likelihood of someone making the fundamental attribution error is culture. People from cultures that are collectivist tend to make the fundamental attribution error at lower rates compared to people from individualist cultures. Generally speaking, the fundamental attribution error is not a very helpful mental shortcut. It can increase animosity and distrust between people. The good news is, psychologists have identified concrete ways that we can overcome the fundamental attribution error. First is through education. The mere fact that you're watching this video and now know about the fundamental attribution error means you'll be less likely to make it in the future, at least in the short term. If you continue to make an effort to consider contextual factors that might be contributing to others' behavior, you'll be less likely to make it in the long term too. This cognitive reframing is worth the effort because ultimately it will reduce your stress levels. Assuming the worst of others is truly exhausting. A second way to reduce the likelihood of making the fundamental attribution error is to practice perspective taking. Research shows that when we imagine ourselves in another person's situation, we're more likely to think of contextual factors that could explain their behavior but aren't attributes of their personality. One way you can put this into practice is to pause the next time you see yourself making a snap judgment about someone in public and consider whether there might be situational explanations for their behavior before jumping to conclusions about who they are as a person. For example, if you see someone buying a birthday cake at the grocery store with food stamps, you might catch yourself thinking, they really should be getting fruits or vegetables with that. But maybe someone in their family has a birthday coming up. Maybe it's their child and they want to have a cake at the birthday party. That added information, which you're not privy to, can really change how we interpret others' behaviors and what judgments we make of them. Taking a few seconds to consider the context around other people's behavior not only makes the world a kinder place, it's also better for you. You have less stress, less concern about what others are doing, and less unnecessary judgment taking up space in your brain. This isn't to say that every person should always get the benefit of the doubt. There certainly are malicious jerks in the world. However, unless they flip you off while they're cutting you off in traffic, you probably should give them the benefit of the doubt the same way you'd give it to yourself if you were the driver in that situation. No one is perfect, and we all fall prey to the fundamental attribution error at one time or another. But we owe it to ourselves and others to pause and reflect on what we're basing our judgments on. Is our interpretation based on what's actually happening in front of us? Or is our brain filling in the blanks based on stories we've been told? In short, the key to overcoming the fundamental attribution error is to either worry less about what the people around you are doing, and if you can't help that, to at least approach them with compassion and curiosity before jumping to a harsh conclusion. That's what you would want if the roles were reversed.